Okay, so in this video what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tell you how you can create a new React app with Snowpack. So I'm also going to tell you how you can structure your project as well. So with Snowpack and React, what you need to do is you need to install these dependencies first of all. You will need the Snowpack obviously, and then you will need this React and React DOM dependencies as well. So that's it. That's all what you need to work with React and Snowpack. And we have got some scripts here. So if you use npm start, it is gonna execute this command actually, snowpack dev, which actually launches the server, and we can access the website on that local server. And if you want to just build it, then you can use the build command. So that's it about this package.json. Now there is another important file related to the Snowpack, that is snowpack.config.js. Over there, this is very important setting, this public and source. So basically you have got source and public directories in like standard React project. You will get these directories, source and public. So in the source, most of your files will be residing, like JSX and JavaScript files will be remaining here. Then you can organize your components in components directory. You can see here I have got these 3 components there, and there is a CSS folder where I am storing all the CSS files for my project. And at the top level, just main index file is there, and this index.jsx can import other components. As you can see, I have imported other components, and same way you can also import CSS files as well. There are different ways to import the CSS files. First one is just give the file path, and second one is using the syntax, import styles from blah blah blah, using this model.css extension. Now to render these components, what you can do is you can use this command react, you can use this method, basically react dom.render, and here you can render anything. You can render the normal HTML, or you can also render the components. You can see here we are rendering components here. So we imported these components like that, and we are rendering it here. Now components can be like 2 types. You can see here there are components. So components can be function based and class based. So a C1 component, you can see here, it is simple function which is returning this h2 element with this thing, and we are exporting that thing, that function, and which is we are importing in index.jsx as we saw here, like that. Now c2.jsx, that is a class based component. So if you want to make a class based component, you will need to extend this react.component class, and class based component has got one method render, which is used to render anything for that component. So function based component do not have this life cycle or that render method, but class based have got this method render. So this component will render this h2, and the component can take the props as input, like if you want to pass some data to the component, you can pass that using the props. To access the props, you can use this syntax, this dot props dot and whatever prop name you have passed. So I have passed p1 here, as you can see, index.jsx. Here I'm passing that p1 prop to this c2 component. So just like in normal HTML, how you have got attribute and their values, similar way in for components you can pass this data using this particular syntax, prop name and that's value. So we have seen C1 there is function based component, then C2 there is class based component, and then there is a C3.jsx. This is also class based component, but here we are doing some little bit more. We have seen that render method is there, but class based components have other lifecycle methods as well. For example, there is a constructor, there is a get derived state from props method that gets called before the component gets rendered, and there is a render method as well. We have seen already that, and after that there is a method component did mount after the rendering is finished successfully. So in the constructor, you can see we have seen the we have passed the props. Then we are calling the super props, that is the constructor of the super class, that is react.component. And then we have initialized this dot state to the object. So every component can have a state. State is basically an object which has got different properties. And that's how you can access the state properties. This dot state dot something something something, just like how we access the props, same way. And there is another thing that we are doing here, that is events. Like we have got one button here, and on click event we want to call something or do something. So here you can see this button, type button, and on click we are calling this particular method, this dot change color, and this dot change color is here. So basically we are changing the state of this particular component to something else. We are doing the set state. So when we call this set state, basically what happens is a render method gets called automatically with the new state. So the state is changed, the render method gets called automatically. You don't need to do anything. So we have seen the components, we have seen this CSS importing thing. So briefly I will explain you. This is simple CSS file in which we have mentioned like different styles. For example, how the border should be displayed, how this any element which has got this class container, how it should be displayed. And there is a module.css. so module.css is also a simple CSS file basically. Then this is how we import that, import styles, import index.css. If it is a model, we have to use this index, import styles from whatever is the file name. And once it is imported, we can use that classes that we have defined in the, or the styles that we have defined. For example, we have defined this container class. So in a React, we use this class name attribute to specify the class. And whatever styles we have defined for any element, for example div, h1, h3, all these will be applied here based upon this importing. So another important thing that I want to tell you is that document.getElement by id root. So this thing, what it is happening here is that we are trying to attach this component as a child of this particular element, root element in the index.html. So if you come here, there will be one file in the public folder, index.html. Over there is a div whose id is root. So basically what happens is whatever is in here, so react DOM.render, in that method first argument is this JSX expression. So we are rendering all these components. So all these components will be rendered inside this div element. That is what we have mentioned here in here, react DOM.render. In the second argument we have passed the element under which all these components should be rendered. So source we have seen, public we have seen, where there is an index.html, that is the main file. And if you want to build this particular project, what you can do is you can use this command npm run build, and then what happens is build directory is created. So Snowpack works in the background and creates this build directory where all these files are automatically created for your project. So index.html was there, then index.css is here. So it is not required basically. Let me delete this and run this command. What happens is it will create the build directory automatically. So I executed the build command, npm run build, and you can see build folder is created here. So whatever is in the public folder is coming here, and whatever is in the source folder is coming in the dist directory. And in here in the Snowpack directory, all other packages that we have installed in the project will be displayed here. So index.html is there, and then there is a dist. So here in the dist folder there is a index.js, and then there is a css and components. In css, all the css files will be there, and in the components, all the components will be there. Notice how this has created the js files out of the index.css, and even we have got these components with jsx extension. You can see c1.jsx. If you look at this build folder, there is a actually extension has changed from jsx to js, and for the css files it has changed from css to .proxy.js. So what's happening here is basically the Snowpack is taking those files and converting them into JavaScript files, basically, because browser doesn't understand JSX. Browser only understand JavaScript file, that is JS. It understands the CSS files, but why it is happening here is that why proxy.js is getting created is because once it is .js is created, it is actually creating a module and then it is importing like that, and that's why this proxy.js is being created. Otherwise we do not need it, we can directly use .css. But the main reason is that if you want to import the css files, you will have to convert those css into proxy.js, and that's what is happening here. And once it is built, you can execute that. npm start is the command. So basically, if you do npm start, what is happening is it will go to this package.json and check what command it is, or what script is linked to that start command. So here you can see actual command that will be executed is snowpack dev. What happens is it builds this project and launches the server, localhost server, and also publishes or renders whatever we have given in that index.html. So if you look at this here, it is rendering this function based component, then there is another component, class based component, that I showed you, c1, c2, and finally there is c3 component, and then there is a button as well, this one. And if you look at the sources, you can see the structure that we have seen here is displayed in sources page. So whatever is in the build directory, actually that is being shown there. So if you look at the build directory, there is index.html, then there is a dist folder, and then there is a snowpack folder. So there is index, dist folder, and the snowpack folder. So in the dist there is a component, css, index.js, and so on and so forth. So basically that is how you can set up a snowpack based react project and work on it. So another thing that I wanted to tell you is that whatever you change, any component, if you change here, basically it will get reflected automatically. So what I'm gonna do is here there is this component, c1 function based component. So I'm gonna change it to say xyz, and you can see automatically it gets rendered. I didn't refresh page or anything. So this watching for the file changes, this process is running in the background, and it will look for the changes, file changes, and if some file is changed, automatically it will reload that particular component here in here. So that's how you can work with a React project. If you have more questions, let me know through the comments. Thanks for watching this video.